I suggested to you in an earlier lecture that if we're ever going to find our way out of the solipsistic darkness of relativism, we're going to have to locate something that really matters and is worthy of protection, something of value, something that has a value we think we can justify as not just our opinion or not just our culture's opinion, but something that has genuine, unmistakable value that we can use as the foundation for our own personal system of ethics, that we could use to build a system of ethics on that would allow us to make decisions in life and protect this thing of great value and promote this thing of great value. And so I'm gonna hope, and also gonna guess, that some of you came to the conclusion that, well, I matter. I mean, if nothing else, I matter. I matter to me. I matter to others as well, so I matter. Good. How much do you matter? Hopefully you said a lot. You love you. I love me. And there's others I love. And there's others that love me. And it's important to me that I be able to do things for those that I love in order to help them live better lives. But in order to be able to help those other people live better lives, I've got to make sure I've got my own house in order, right? Like, I've got to be taken care of before I can take care of others, or I got to take care of myself before I can take care of others. And in order for me to take care of myself, I've got to make sure that I am actively trying to create the best circumstances for my life that I possibly can, right? That if I'm going to thrive and I'm going to function and I'm going to have healthy relationships with others and I'm going to help people when they need it, I've got to make sure that the things in my life are in order so that I can go out and attempt new things and build relationships with other people. Sort of like when you're in an airplane and the flight attendant says, hey, if we lose cabin pressure and the mask drops out of the ceiling, make sure you put your own mask on before you try to help others. And it makes sense, right? That we can't take care of others unless we take care of ourselves first. So something that really matters is us. And in particular, what matters about us are our circumstances in life. There are some circumstances for us that are better than others, probably. If I can maintain health, that's better than being ill. If I can maintain housing, that's better than not having any shelter, right? Now, what I would ask you initially is this. Do you think there is a best set of circumstances for you? Do you think that there is some combination of circumstances that exist, like a particular kind of job and a particular kind of family status, a particular kind of health status, economic status, where you live? Do you think it would be at least theoretically possible, even if you couldn't do it right now, do you think that there is sort of a laundry list of circumstances for your life that would be ideal? Even if you don't know what those are, do you think that exists? And I want you to just kind of play along with me here for a minute and just assume, like, well, yeah, I suppose that's possible, okay? And maybe think about how you answered this question on your thought primer. Do you believe it's possible that you could ever be wrong about what is in your own best interest? And I'm imagining that you said, well, yeah, of course, okay? And the fact that you said, yeah, of course, means, well, I recognize that there exists some set of circumstances that would be in my best interest. And it exists sort of independently of me, right? Because if I can get it wrong, then that means it's not just something I think or believe. I have gotten my own best interest wrong, who knows how many times in my own life. There are certain things that are better for me than others, and sometimes we make mistakes in the way that we judge these things, and we mistake what our own best interest is. So if you think it's possible that you could be mistaken about what your own best interest is in a given situation, then that implies that you have a certain set of circumstances that are best for you that exist separately and objectively from you. Now the question is this. Let's say you did know what your best interest is in a particular situation. If you intentionally, knowingly did not seek your own best interest, would you be doing something wrong? And if you would, who would be wronged? Who would be the object or the person that's harmed because you intentionally did not do what was best for you? And you might think it would be you, right? That even if you sometimes you're going to have to make a sacrifice and you don't get what you want, right? Sometimes you don't get something really good, but it's because you recognize it's in your best interest to sacrifice the thing that's really good because there's something even better that's going to be served by this sacrifice, okay? But if you had the ability to pursue your own best interest and you chose not to, would you be doing something wrong to yourself? And as a normal, healthy adult, we're just going to assume that you're normal, rational, not a child, you're not on drugs, you're not suffering from hallucinations, you're just a normal, average, healthy adult. Who's best to, or who would be most likely to know what's best for you? Did you say you? Okay, you know what you're thinking like? You're thinking like an ethical egoist. Ethical egoism is a theory that there is that the right action is the one that advances one's own best interests. Okay? So ethical egoism is an ethical theory that puts our own best interest first. Okay? Now think about how this distinguishes itself from ethical subjectivism, right? In ethical subjectivism, what we said is, well, what makes a moral judgment right is thinking it's right. It's our beliefs. It's our thoughts in ethical subjectivism. And there's nothing outside of ourselves that exists subjectively that we could appeal to as sort of a yardstick to measure the moral quality of a particular action. But in ethical egoism doesn't care about your thoughts and your desires and your beliefs because, as we were just discussing, you can get it wrong. You sometimes make bad decisions for yourself. And when you knowingly do that, you usually really regret it. And that implies the ethical egoist says that your interests and your best interests exist independently of your thoughts and desires. You may not even be aware of what your best interests are. And in fact, you see this in your life all the time where you think your best interest is one thing and then you come to learn like, oh my gosh, no, it's not that. It was this other thing. I didn't know it, but this other thing was always in my best interest. I just had to learn that. Okay? And so in this way, ethical egoism is what we would call an objectivist ethical theory. Whether something is the right or wrong thing to do is no longer a subjective question. It's an objective question. Doesn't matter what you think, you could get it wrong. The thing that you should do is the thing that advances your own best interests. The right-making feature of a particular action is that it advances your best interest. And the wrong-making feature of an action would be that it didn't, or it harms your progress towards achieving your best interest. Now, there's a couple of things that we need to sort of make sure we're clear on before we start looking at arguments for and against ethical egoism and what the actual argument for ethical egoism is. One is, make sure you're distinguishing between egoism and egotism, right? Egotism is that, tool-like quality where somebody thinks they're all that. Everything's about me. I'm very egotistical. I'm so important that I should be of utmost importance to everybody else, right? This is the annoying person at the party that thinks that the menu has to be completely fitting with that person's desires, regardless of what everybody else wants. They are the most important person in the room. And that's not egoism. Egoism is, I'm the most important person to me. I'm the thing I have to take primary care of, even in front of my own children sometimes, because if I don't take care of myself first, I can't take care of my own children, and my children depend on me. And I want my children to continue to live and thrive. So I've got to make sure I'm taking care of myself. That's egoism, that I'm taking care of myself first. That's egoism. But it's not saying that I'm more important than my children, or I'm more important than my partner, or this stranger on the street. It's just saying that I recognize to my children they're the most important people to them too. And those people on the street, the strangers, that they're the most important persons to themselves too. That's what egoism says. It doesn't say that everybody else has to agree that you're the most important person out of all the people. We also, an ethical egoist would say, don't distinguish putting myself first as being selfish. It's not, they would say. I don't think I deserve more than anybody else, and I don't think I'm more deserving than anybody else. I'm simply saying that I have an interest in maintaining myself. I don't want what's unfair. I don't want more than what others are due. I don't want to take from others. I just want to make sure that I'm able to take care of myself first so I can do all of the other caretaking that I also want to do. It's not all about me. I don't want everything. I don't want unfair shares. I'm not selfish. I'm just self-interested. Sometimes it'll be in my interest to sacrifice things, like make donations to charities or help my neighbor unload bricks out of the back of a truck. To be neighborly and have good neighborly relations. So it's in my self-interest to do selfless things, the ethical egoist might say. And the ethical egoist would say, and this is really sort of natural, we are psychologically hardwired to put ourselves first, right? That's the example of the airplane mask falling out. We're psychologically hardwired to think of our own survival before we can be altruistic and think of others. Okay? And ethical egoism just kind of builds on what they claim is that psychological fact of putting our self-interest first. And they say, well, because that's the way it is, that is the way you should behave ethically. That your ethical system should be putting your own best interest first.